So in this video, I want to talk about if you should back raise aces after flat calling pre-flop in 5-card Omaha. So back raising aces basically means you flat call pre against an open raise or against a raise and a call, and then someone comes in with a squeeze and it gets back to you. Should you back raise with all the aces or not? The first thing to understand about 5-card Omaha when you compare it to 4-card Omaha is that you have 3 side cards with your pair. So you have ace-ace, 3 side cards, versus ace-ace and 2 side cards in 4-card Omaha. And what that means is that there's a wider range of possibilities that come alongside your pocket pair. And that means you have aces that are significantly stronger against your opponent's RFI range in 5-card Omaha on the upside, but you also have aces that are significantly weaker in comparison to 4-card Omaha. So think about a hand that is very strong. Ace-ace, king, queen, jack, double suited. That is an amazingly strong hand that is not even possible to hold in 4-card Omaha. That level of connectivity is not possible because you have only 4 cards. Then on the downside, if you have ace-ace, 7-3 deuce with 4 spades, for example, that hand also isn't possible in 4-card Omaha and is an incredibly weak hand. So the range profile gets broadened in 5-card Omaha, and for that reason, you will find some of the aces to be very weak. And that then in return will make you play more passively. So if we start off by looking into the cold call frequency of MP versus EP, here we have an EP open raise, and then we look into MP's reaction, and we type in ace-ace, we can see that aces are flatting here 24.5%. So about a quarter of your aces are supposed to flatten this position. If you compare this with 4-card Omaha, I have this on the side here in PLO Trainer, only 6.4% of the hands that have ace-ace in them are going to flat call in MP. So there's already an indication that there are more aces, percentage-wise, that are not strong enough to be 3-betting. And when I say about not strong enough, I mean this in 2 ways. Number one, the equity you have against your opponent's RFI range is lower than 4-card Omaha, so you don't push that small equity advantage, if any at all. And then secondary, the realizability of your equity also diminishes as your side cards become more and more worthless. So in 4-card Omaha, when you 3-bet aces and then create an SPR of about 3.5, there are more boards where you're able to just stack off by pot size c-betting your dry aces, where in 5-card Omaha, you do need more backup as your opponent has more backup as well, holding 5 cards against your pair of aces. And that makes you shy away from pumping a lot of money into the pot pre-flop with aces if your side cards are very weak. So let's imagine we do see a call here with, again, a quarter of the aces. Let me remove the aces from the syntax, and then we see a squeeze from the cutoff. So this is obviously a very narrow and very strong range. Under the gun comes ahead and calls, and now it goes back to our position in MP. If we were to back raise in this instance here at 100 big blinds, we were able to put more than half our stack into the middle, and intuitively most people would think that that means we should be re-raising / back raising all our aces at this point. And this is actually not true. If we type in ace-ace in this spot, now remember the aces we're going to look into in a moment here are all aces that initially flatted as well. So they're inherently not that strong because the stronger ones were 3-betting initially already. So about half our aces are calling again. They're not going to back raise in this instance. And if you look at the components, the characteristics of those aces, we're looking at disconnected trip suits, as well as mono suits. So basically 4 of a suit, 3 of a suit, disconnectivity all over the place. Like those hands are not strong enough to back raise, even though we get about 60% of our stack in before the flop. Now, if you look into another program called Pro Poker Tools Odds Oracle, we can run here a simple equity analysis with different starting hands. So if we type in our aces over here, and we give our opponents a 20% RFI range, and then we give someone like a 10% squeezing range, or let's say an 8% squeezing range, right? We're able to just like run a simple equity simulation / analysis and see that we obviously are pushing equity here. And it makes sense to re-raise at this point. But if we are narrowing our ranges down to, or our aces down to, for example, a mono suit, so we have 4 spades, for example, we can see a significant shift in equity here. So we're now getting a lot closer to a position where our equity push is very insignificant, especially when you think about the realizability of this equity. So if you go to the flop, even if the SPR is low, there are a lot of situations where you will have trouble stacking off profitably. And then if you spin this even further to a four-way situation, so you will find situations where you see a guy limping, a guy raising, you just flatting with bad aces, there is a re-raise, a couple of guys call, and you think it's a great spot to put a ton of money into the middle with your aces at this point, you might be actually in the wrong. So if you look at a 25% range, another, let's say 30% range, there's a narrow 10% range, and you look at aces in general, of course, you will find some very, very strong aces that are going to push the overall equity here to a point where we are in an advantage of 29% four ways, right? But then if you are looking at the bottom, again, for example, 4 of a suit here, we're looking at a spot where we are not even pushing equity. So we don't even have an advantage. And if you connect that idea with the low realizability of our equity, it becomes pretty clear that you don't want to pump more money into the middle. So be careful when it comes to re-raising with your bad aces before the flop against 2 opponents, against 3 opponents, because oftentimes you end up either check folding the flop or getting it in really bad on the flop multi-way with no nutted outs in a situation where you didn't even push an equity advantage pre-flop in the first place.